It's the final week in the Premier League campaign, and it's been a fantastic season. And still, right to the end, you've still got the title to be decided, top four, and relegation, which is incredibly exciting for myself as a neutral watching. So, to celebrate, I'm going to do two videos. The first video, this video, is going to be discussing the awards that are going to be potentially given out and who I would personally give out the award to if I could, if I was in charge. And the second video that I'm going to make is my Premier League team of the season, because it is that time of the year. EA Sports have released their official FIFA team of the season, and loads of people are making their predictions and what they would go for. So I'm going to do the same in that video. But this video, like I said, I'm going to be discussing about the Premier League awards and who I would give the award out to personally. So, I've got four awards that I'm going to talk about: the Player of the Season, Young Player of the Season, Manager of the Season, and a cheeky one that I've added at the end, Signing of the Season. So let's begin with Player of the Season. Now, you've got 8 different nominations, the likes of Salah, De Bruyne, Trent, and James Ward-Prowse and Jarrod Bowen, who, to be fair, both of them have been very, very good this season. Both of them incredibly consistent, and their teams, West Ham and Southampton, have heavily relied on those two players specifically, and I wouldn't be surprised if both of them moved on to different clubs for next season. But who I personally would choose for Player of the Season, for me it's an quite obvious pick in Mohamed Salah. He has played 34 games and has 22 goals, and he has the highest expected goals compared to any player in the league, and Salah has the most assists and the highest expected assists in the league. For me, Salah is the obvious pick. Yes, he has 5 goals are penalties. Having said that, he still has the highest expected goals ratio, like I said, and also the highest expected assists. So for me, I would personally give that award to Salah. Then for Young Player of the Season, you've got the likes of Trent nominated, Phil Foden, Mason Mount, Conor Gallagher, and Bukayo Saka, and also Ramsdale just chucked in there. Now, for me personally, I like the Young Player of the Season award. I just think the criteria should change. The fact that a 24-year-old could win Young Player of the Season, to me, is quite strange. Maybe it wasn't so strange 15 years ago, but with the way that these Premier League footballers are now, where they're kind of just athletes, the way they have such strict diets, the way they train, the phenomenal output they give, I think you could easily have a Young Player of the Season award for maybe under 20s, under 19s. So in my opinion, the criteria should change to under 20s or maybe under 21s. I don't think it should be under 23s or under 24s. However, because of the current criteria, you've got the likes of Trent and Aaron Ramsdale in there. So for me, because of the current criteria, I would give the award to Trent. He has 12 assists and 2 goals in 31 games. That is phenomenal. Trent has been brilliant. And this idea as well that he's not very good at defending, or that in big games he can't defend very well, to me is absolutely ludicrous. Trent is a phenomenal right back, could easily play in midfield for Liverpool. So with the current criteria for Young Player of the Season, I would give it to Trent. Probably if the Young Player of the Season criteria changed, I'd give it to Bukayo Saka, because he's been so important for Arsenal and been a really influential player for them. But with the current criteria as it is, I'd give the award to Trent for Young Player of the Season. So for Manager of the Season, you've got Thomas Frank, Patrick Vieira, Eddie Howe, Klopp, and Pep Guardiola nominated. Before I get on to the obvious 2 candidates, I'll give a shout out to the other 3 managers. In Eddie Howe, of course, he joined in December and had a complete change around of fortune for Newcastle, where Newcastle, at the beginning of the season, had Steve Bruce as manager and were nailed on relegation. So to go from that to January, where they had new owners, yes, but they lost to Cambridge United at home in the 3rd round of the FA Cup, to then at one point win 10 games out of 15 in the Premier League and be comfortably mid-table, shows the impact of Eddie Howe. And yes, they spent a lot of money, the likes of Kieran Trippier, Bruno, Chris Wood, Dan Burn and Matt Targett. However, a lot of that squad is predominantly Championship quality, and Eddie Howe has improved the ability of a lot of those players. I especially think of the likes of Ryan Fraser, Joel Linton, even St Maximin and Joe Willock. Eddie Howe has elevated these players to a higher standard. And I think personally, if Steve Bruce was still manager, Newcastle would still be in trouble in terms of relegation. But alas, that's not the case. They're comfortably safe. So I can see why Eddie Howe's been nominated. Then you have Patrick Vieira, who's done a really good job at Crystal Palace. A lot of people going into this campaign thought that Palace would struggle because they had a lot of changes in their squads. Vieira's a new manager. How well is he going to do? But Palace play really good football. They've developed a lot of good young players. And they play decent football. And they've had a really good season. Not just in the Premier League, of course, but being in the FA Cup semi-final is pretty good effort from them. And I think of the young players they've developed, the likes of Tyreek Mitchell, Mark Guehi, Joachim Anderson, Conor Gallagher and Michael Olise, all have had brilliant seasons for Palace, and they have a really good balance of those young players, but also the experienced players of the likes of McCarthy, Hughes, Ward, and even Zaha. You'd probably consider him now an experienced player. That blend of different players of ages and abilities has given Palace the ability to play very well this season. Vieira's done a great job, so he definitely deserved a nomination for Manager of the Season. Then finally you have Thomas Frank, newly promoted manager. He's never managed in the Premier League. Of course, Brentford, they're newly promoted themselves. And as I record this video, they have one game left and they're on 46 points. They've had a fantastic campaign. I think back to the first game of the Premier League, Friday night, at home against Arsenal. They comfortably won that game. But then at home, they've beaten the likes of Southampton comfortably, West Ham, Everton, Watford. So like I said, Brentford have had a fantastic campaign under such a shoestring budget. So Thomas Frank deserves a lot of credit. I will say though, since Eriksen's come into the team, he's played 9 games for Brentford and they've won 7 times. Whereas in the 28 games that Eriksen didn't play, Brentford only had 6 wins. So that does show the phenomenal impact of Eriksen. However, Thomas Frank obviously deserves some credit because his coaching's been brilliant. And I think there's not a better example of his brilliant coaching than when they played Everton away from home. Everton went down to 10 men and Thomas Frank decided to be bold and put on Janelt and Josh Da Silva in the second half. And then they comfortably won the game. And yes, Everton were down to 10 men, but I think it's Thomas Frank's bold ability to tactically innovate within the game and play a really good style of football that has given Brentford the confidence and the ability to more than compete in the Premier League. So Brentford had a brilliant campaign. And I do think they will probably stay up next season, but it's going to be interesting to see how they deal with the losses of Eriksen and Toney, who both will probably leave. So, I've waffled on a bit. On to Pep and Klopp. Both these managers have had brilliant seasons, obviously. Klopp, of course, and Liverpool still going for the quadruple, while Pep Guardiola, they have to settle on just the Premier League, potentially. This award, though, is only for the Premier League specifically. So I'm not going to include the fact that Liverpool have won the League Cup and the FA Cup, and they're in the semi-final of the Champions League, although that is very, very impressive, of course. In terms of the Premier League Manager of the Season award, in recent years, it kind of just has gone to either Pep or Klopp, and generally speaking, the manager that wins the league. And on this basis, given that Man City are ahead of Liverpool and it's theirs to lose, I would probably give the Manager of the Season to Pep, and I think it will go to Pep. However, that doesn't take anything from Klopp, who has had an amazing campaign. I just think Pep just edges it just because I think they will win the Premier League. And also, you've got to say, Man City have basically played the whole season without a recognised striker, other than Jesus, who's actually normally played on the right or the left. So I would just give the edge to Pep, but obviously Pep and Klopp have both been fantastic this season. Then finally, signing of the season. Now, it's not normally the case that January signings do well in any league. But actually this season, you've got 3 January signings that have had massive impacts on their teams. Luis Diaz of Liverpool, Kuvalevski at Spurs, and Christian Eriksen at Brentford. All 3 of them have had brilliant impacts from January onwards. And you could argue that any of those 3 deserve to be the signing of the season. For me, however, I will give it to Ronaldo. He scored 18 goals for Man United, and only 3 of them in the Premier League have been penalties. And I just think without Ronaldo's goals, Man United would... They feasibly could have finished lower than Brighton or Wolves, which is crazy to imagine. But in such a horrific season that Man United have had, you've got Ronaldo and then arguably De Gea have both performed really well for Man United and played quite consistently well, but especially Ronaldo. So for me, given the impact Ronaldo has had on the Man United team and where they would be without Ronaldo, I would give Ronaldo the signing of the season. I can somewhat understand fans arguing as to whether Ronaldo should be in the team, in the sense that he's quite selfish, maybe doesn't press as much, maybe they need another striker, a Firmino type who will drop deep and what have you. But having said that, Ronaldo should still be there next season, in my opinion, because the phenomenal impact he's still having in the Premier League at 36 or 37, it's brilliant. So for me, Ronaldo's my signing of the season. So to quickly recap, I'd give Salah the player of the season, and I think he will win that. I think Trent will win the young player of the season, and I would give him the award. And I think Pep will probably win manager of the season, and I would give the award to Pep. And then for signing of the season, if there was one, I'd give it to Ronaldo. So that's my award picks. What would you choose? Leave your suggestion in the comments below, and please like and subscribe on this video. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.